smaller than life usually. So what this is kind of an occupational portrait. Saint Eligius, or Saint Eloi, he's also called E-L-O-I, he was the patron saint of goldsmiths. And again, this chappie here is very, very real looking, so you sort of assume that he was an actual goldsmith who was being immortalized by Petrus Christus. And so it's a type, I think, did I put it in? It's a little bit like lovely Meron, Saint Joseph on the job in his carpenter's shop. Again, particularly with the little selling mousetraps on that little folding down ledge. But here it's actually been reversed, because we're the outside customers looking in to the shop window, basically, the shelf. In fact, there we are, in this not very successfully, the rounded convex mirror. I mean, that's us looking into the shop. Reflected here. But everything within the thing, I mean, there's all about the goldsmith's trade, and there's all sorts of mysterious things. They look like shark's teeth and coral, which would be amulets and, for good luck, things like that. The happy couple, and again, very important. Look at how incredibly amazing the headgear has become by this point, into the late 1440s, with this very grand, expensive outfit that she wears. So they have come to buy the rings. And that's basically what's happening here. He's weighing off the gold, what have you, for their wedding rings. And see, even there, when you start reading stuff in, because anytime you see scales in any picture, anywhere, certainly back then you couldn't help but think of the Last Judgment, the weighing of souls, because St. Michael in Last Judgment, see, he's the one with the scales. And usually the blessed, the scales are way out of whack. The blessed are up here because they're all weightless, and the others have the weight of sin, so they're dragging them down to hell, basically. So there's a little warning, don't like your material stuff too much. There's a famous Vermeer painting that's in Washington of a lady with scales, but her scales are totally in balance. So it's as if, because Vermeer always finds a sort of middle road, a happy medium between materialism and spirituality somehow. It's all right to love it, but don't be obsessed by it, basically, that sort of idea. So here there's a little bit of a warning against too much wealth, too much, insistence on things from this world, as opposed to spiritual. But even just the artistry, you see this belt, there's no reason why he had to throw the belt down on the ledge here and have it hang off the edge. See how it throws shadows down and punches down? That's this thing called trompe-l'œil, T-R-O-M-P-E, L'-O-E-I-L, I think, which literally means lying to the eye. It's the illusionism, again, that there's actual sort of three-dimensional space on the flat two-dimensional surface. And particularly when you move into 17th century Dutch still life, so often there's either something like a knife hanging off the end. Well, even we saw it here, didn't we? Look at the that's the same sort of thing. See how it hangs over the edge there? That immediately pushes in and out in a realistic, even his hands hanging over the edge there. And it could be the Dutch, they love things like the coiling of a lemon peel that's been cut in a beautiful, almost sculpture, and that'll hang off the edge of the table, just again to create that little sense of space and depth. So this is a sort of different kind of portrait, but obviously whoever commissions it, presumably the couple here, piles of money, because this is about as time-consuming, you would think, as a religious work, and a little bit like the Arnolfini wedding, to have as much substance, as much meaning. But chickening out, see, no bottle glass, just regular old glass up there. Boom. Pay extra for that. Now, this is moving along to another beautiful, smoothly finished lady. And you can see slightly different headgear because it's sort of gone a little bit transparent up on the high brow. A little bit like in Italy, they would either shave the brow or pluck the hair because an actual high brow. That was the emblem of beauty, basically. I don't think the men did it, I think just the women. And again with the pin pushed in there. So, and the folds. This is another thing I always say about Dutch 17th century still lifes, that because if you look at hundreds of them on the tablecloth, it always has folds, as if they just took it out of the drawer, stuck it on the table. Iron the damn thing, and you've saved yourself another week's work. Because now, even here, you've got to do all the sort of the fold and the lights and the dark and things like that. It just adds to the complexity. But if you're the artist, you like doing that because it's intricate and just looks better somehow than just a smooth piece of white. You've even got another little pin holding things in place there. But again, she's very smooth and generalised. I mean, I don't think anybody was quite that perfectly formed. And people actually wanted to be either the same as her or closely related. But actually, I don't think you could, because if it was the men who look a lot, they're very specific, you might be able to kind of pin them down, two brothers or something like that. But with the women, they're so generalised, I'm not sure if it's really possible to do it. But this is a portrait by Roger van der Weyden, who is the next of our superstar artists. In fact, the third of the really big three. We've got Robert Compin, we've got Jan van Eyck, and now Roger. And he is the one who, I mentioned again very briefly talking about Robert Compin, that Roger signed on as Compin's. Well, I don't think that was in 1427. Roger is probably born in about 1400. And 1427, she is far too old to be an apprentice. So it must have been a collaborator, a colleague, as much as anything else. I've always thought, well, why couldn't he have been born much, much later, and then he would have been younger when he entered into Compin's studio. But I'm not sure if there's a date specified. He did actually marry a lady who might have been Robert Compin's niece-in-law. That makes sense. Anyway, that's why they think that these two might be sort of related. Don't worry about that, because I don't believe it for a minute. But as I say, you can sort of specify the dating if you know enough about costumes, just because they're a little bit different. And then there's this absolutely wonderful lady as well, who now is in Washington. This one, by the way, that's in Berlin, that's in London, that's in Washington. So you do have to get around a bit to see all these things. And this is quite a lot later, about 1455. This one maybe 1435, that one 1425. Yeah, don't worry about all of it. But it's just, again, to show different costume and everything. Because this is now this very high costume, you can see the high brow, literally. I don't think she has been nearly as prettified as the others, because it's not an incredibly attractive face, it's just the whole thing is so unbelievably beautiful, with the headdress, the headgear that kind of folds down on either side. And again, just the gently clasped hands that kind of prop everything up. Absolutely wonderful. So I think there's sort of, the others are kind of a bit superficial, a bit kind of just sort of nice to look at. But no real sense of... Actually, the huge difference here is, see, she's looking away rather modestly. She's looking right out of the picture at us, and as soon as the person in the picture catches your eye like that, it's really quite different. And she's more sort of, again, modestly, eyes down, but you're much more, I think, sort of drawn inside her in a psychological kind of... I mean, she appears to certainly be quite aristocratic, almost arrogant, but there's something... I think very just delightful about her. Go to Washington, have a look. Just give men not quite equal time. This is still all Roger for a little while now, for quite a while. He might be the illegitimate son of Philip the Good, the Duke of Burgundy. Not quite sure what the argument for that is. Done in the mid-1450s. If it is this fellow, his name was Anthony, the Grand Bastard of Burgundy. I thought that was one of the greatest nicknames of all time. I'd like you to call me the Grand Bastard of Toronto. That would be quite good. So he holds the arrow, so presumably he's a military. But he also, see, again, we've met this a couple of times, the Order of the Golden Fleece. This little dead thingy there, founded by his father, if it is the right person. The Order of the Golden Fleece, founded about 1430 or so. As I said, a kind of gentleman's club to cling on to the good old days of the old feudal system. And Anthony the Grand Bastard was put into the order in 1456. And that's the kind of event that you have celebrated by having your portrait painted. So the two could be linked together somehow. See, here's another one that drives me nuts, because it's in the National Gallery of London. And it's one of those ones that you always think this is an unbelievably good portrait, and then you find out it's Roger and studio or something that they looked at it carefully and bits of it, they don't like it by him. But I think it's rather a good image again, because it's got enough away from just absolutely straight portraiture to being a kind of slightly rough-edged, if you like. Because it is a portrait of an actual person, I'm sure, because he's just so real, the way, even slightly scarred face. But he is shown as Saint Ivo, I-V-O, who was the patron saint of lawyers. And this is around 1450 or so. And this is one of the things, for generations it just lived unrecognized in some little cottage somewhere in the wilds of England. And one of these nosy people from Sotheby's or Christie's happened to be wandering through and spotted it and hauled it into town, and it went and sold for millions, that sort of thing. But it's just people don't like this, the foreshortening of the head, which looks pretty good to me. It's a little bit awkward. It looks like he's got a bit of a hunchback. That's actually just the roundness of his chair, which is mad. But look at things that we've talked about before, the shutters. See, but Roger doesn't really do the minuscule detail that we saw with Jan van Eyck. He's a little bit more kind of, not shortcuts, but he doesn't get bogged down too much. But there's a lovely view out of the window. I don't think there's anybody doing that. See, they're just hanging around under the trees, little orchards, but again, the river's going back and rather Disney-like little towns. Nice swans swimming around there. Beautiful. There's something about reflections in water which is so appealing in art. But all the still, yet again, we saw that so often, all the hardware of how hinges and shutters and things are put together. And the different textures of the fur-lined collar and thing. Now, what he's doing is he was actually, well, as I said, it's probably like the St. Eligius one, a real goldsmith playing the saint. This is probably a real lawyer disguised as Saint Ivo. Ivo, he lived in the 13th century in France and was apparently famous for championing the cause of the poor and the oppressed, which is not what you usually think lawyers do. But he was known as the advocate of the poor. So again, some modern lawyer wants to be associated with his good quality. He's holding a paper. Actually, I would complain a little bit about the rather stiff and wooden hand. That's not the best hand in the world, is it? But if you look at the paper, what he's got, and I flipped it around, just that bit there, it's a sort of a mix of real world words and mumbo jumbo, so maybe that's a kind of little in-joke on lawyer language, which is impossible to read, basically. But anyway, it's a marvellous, I think, a lovely sort of contrast of all the various textures and things like that around the image. And the focus is also rather nice, the way he sort of gazes down towards the written word. But this is certainly the idea, again, of the corner portrait, where you expand the space, you get to look out the window, not to totally distract you, but just because it's something else nice to look at. And, hang on, I've got to go to the next